morning and welcome to today's Alumni Talk on the topic exploring study and career options in commerce, finance, social impact, and Australia. Let's start with Manu Ponnuswami. He's an alumnus of CS Coimbatore, class of 2019, and Manu is currently a consultant at EY Australia. He completed a Bachelor's of Commerce and a Bachelor's in Finance and Economics from UNSW, Sydney. He's going to tell us all about studying and working in Australia and what the finance world looks like from there.
And next, we have Sambhavi Ragvan, an alumna of CS Erode, class of 2016, the first batch of CS. She's currently an impact analyst based in Mumbai and has a master's in international development from Monash University in Melbourne. Before this, she worked as an auditor at Deloitte for 4 years. So she's been on both sides of the commerce world, corporate and social impact. So before we dive into your career journeys, we'd love to go back a bit to your CS days. How does it feel to be back, even virtually, with CS Academy again?
I'll probably go first. Well, first of all, thank you for organizing such a wonderful event. And I think it's always amazing to come back to school, no matter virtually or in person. Every year when I visit India, I actually do go to school and visit my teachers. So that's always nice to come back and support and be a part of that community again. I really enjoyed my school days and made some of my best friends there. I'm still in touch with them, and every year we try to plan, and we all go to school together. Although we're not going as students, it feels nice. You still see the teachers who taught you, and it's always a fond memory coming back together. So yeah, I've had a lot of good times there. Thank you.
I resonate a lot with whatever Manu said. I think school's always special, and I'm always happy to make time for events like this that has to do with school. I guess being the first batch of CS was very special. So we also got a lot of liberty and freedom to kind of explore, things. So I guess that also school has played a very important role in shaping me as the person I have become today. So always looking back at school kind of personally helps me see how much I've grown. And I still am in touch with a lot of teachers, and like one of my accounts teacher from school still happens to be sort of like my mentor. And I think that way it's always really special.
Okay, so honestly, it's so nice to hear. And it's always fun for us to know what school life was like many years ago. So do you guys remember what kind of students you were back then? Were you more into academics, clubs, sports, or just the let's survive school time?
I definitely was not the chatterbox, but I did do a lot of other things, trying to be part of as many things as I could possibly put my feet into. One of my most favorite things to do was the entrepreneurship day. Not sure if CS still does that, but in Coimbatore, we had this one day where people would come and, they had stalls together with their classes and everything. And, my fondest memory was actually baking cupcakes. And I think that also started, my passion for baking. And even today I bake. And then I always think, I did this with my friends because they all came home and we baked together. And, co-curricular was also one of my favorite classes. And, bunking and doing so many random things with your friends and teachers getting annoyed. Yeah, I was probably a little bit of a brat, but it's all, good now.
So for me, I was definitely the chatterbox. I was that kid, every teacher used to complain saying I'm distracting the other person. And I don't think that has changed over the years. It's the same complaint I get at work as well. But I think I was, again, because like I said, us being in the first batch meant like, we were all figuring out things together. So I was very active when it came to house activities, to be extremely competitive. So if you name someone from like my juniors or whatever, the way I remember was like, oh, the Vayu house guy or like the Akash house guy. And I think my fondest memories are around that. I wasn't really into sports, but I guess I was always into extracurriculars, and I guess CS also in a lot of ways encouraged it along with studies, and that's what made it special. So yeah.
It is so interesting to hear about how both of you started out at different CS campuses, but your paths of trust. And on that note, over to you. We would love to know more about how your journey evolved from CS.
Can you go first?
Would you like to go?
Yeah. So yeah, I did commerce, but again, just for context, I think I didn't really like. I had varied interests, but it was everyone in my family had done commerce, so it was more like a default option than like a well thought through plan. And after I did commerce, I think like I was giving entrance tests and so on, and I got into Christ University Bangalore, and I did BCom honors. Again, not very well thought through, I would say, because at that point, I didn't know the kind of options that were available to me. And if I were a student now, obviously that will be different, which is why I'm giving that context. So yeah, so 3 years were pretty good. It was very, I think the environment in my university in a lot of ways was similar to what I had in CS, with a lot of opportunities, if I can put it that way. And I think what I found interesting was, the kind of the fact that, like, unlike in Erode, I got to meet people from different cultures and different states, and so I guess that was like my starting point of moving out to the world, and then I'm guessing you'd probably ask about work later, but I got into campus placement, and that's how I worked as an auditor. But like the 4 years more had to do with me trying to figure out where my interests truly lie, and then making the switch to the social sector and doing my master's in international development at Monash.
Yeah, so for me, similar to Sam, I had a commerce background as well. So I did commerce and maths, 11th and 12th. And I think one of the reasons why I picked up, everybody in my family were all engineers and doctors. So I was like the odd one out, and my parents were like, oh, okay, are you sure? And they were happy with whatever I chose. But, obviously they were like, okay, what are you going to do after and all that? And I didn't have like a clear cut, like a plan, like how Sam said. I think a lot of us in that 11th and 12th, we're still exploring and figuring things out. But I think for me, one of the things I knew was I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I didn't feel like studying for that long. So I said, okay, I'm going to do something related to that and start something of my own, which I'm still thinking and working on. But so I ended up, after finishing 12th, I started applying to other countries and different options. And I got into this university in Australia. And at that same time, I also wanted to go on an exchange program. So what I ended up doing was, after I received my offer, I spoke to the university and I said, okay, is it a possibility to defer my application? So I would start a year later, and they accepted. So once that was confirmed, I ended up going to Germany on the Rotary Youth Exchange. Not sure if a lot of you have heard about this, but so I ended up doing that. My cousins, my dad, they've all done this when they were, 17, 18. So it was kind of like a family thing as well. And then, so I came back from Germany, and then it was COVID. So I was doing online classes for about 7-8 months. And then I had the chance to go to Australia. So I finished my degree in December last year. And so the way it works in Australia is they have set times, for graduate programs and internships, all of that. So I applied, I think 8 or 9 months before I was meant to graduate. And by the time I was in my last semester of university, I actually got my job offer. And I finished university in December and started my, my current job in February this year. So I'm still very much new into the workforce. And that's how I, got to being where I am today.
Thank you for sharing. So to start us off, both of you chose quite different paths within the commerce stream. Could you tell us what first got you interested in your fields? Something that you got to know about when you were studying in school, and how those early choices shaped where you are today.
So for me, I think, like I said, I had varied interests in school, and also not having enough information at that time kind of made it more confusing for me. And I think I talk on behalf of my fellow friends from my batch as well. So I knew when I was doing commerce, I really enjoyed it because I was quite the nerd who enjoyed studying in general. But I also liked economics. I also liked accounts and so on. So like I said, BCom was more like a default option than anything else. I think it was more during my undergrad that, there are specific aspects to commerce as well. There's like finance and there's like accounting aspect and so on. So there, I think I got the opportunity to kind of, I can tell that, oh, this interests me more. And I could make that differentiation once I got into bachelor's, because unlike in school, you start going into depth of whatever you're studying when you're doing your undergrad. But then even then, I think I still had quite a few options, if I can put it like that. And because the campus placement, again, is like a very, I guess, very exciting time. And, you're also nervous and you're scared. And because for the first time, it's like you're being told that you need to be an adult, but you don't know how to be an adult. So, and like Deloitte had come for placements, and Deloitte is like a big name. So even I remember when I was going for the interview and like the exams, I wasn't really sure if that is what I wanted to do. But like in hindsight, I think that's how I would have felt irrespective of what kind of a job I was applying for. So that is how I went into audit. And I think that kind of phase is supposed to be like an exploratory phase. And in audit, I guess what I enjoyed doing was, it's like, because I really liked accounting in general, I liked playing around with numbers and trying to understand where is this number coming from, and asking client questions and so on. But I guess when I wanted to transition, it was coming more from a place of I like this, but I kind of want more. And for me, I guess I was working when COVID lockdown happened, and the job I did had uh, directly was not impacted by whatever was going around. And I was also working for like clients based in the US, and I was getting paid well. I was safe. My family was safe. Like salary gets credited on time, but in the news, I just kept hearing how people were struggling. And for the first time, I think it hit me saying, I should be out there doing something that directly contributes to, what's going on. I mean, as an auditor, I could have also thought of, I'm still trying to avoid fraud, like make sure fraudulent practices don't happen, or I guess it depends on the way we see it. But I wanted to do something where I'm directly contributing and creating an impact. And that got me questioning a lot more about, like, I know about commerce well now, but what else can I transition into? Because humanities was not a thing when I was in school. I knew I liked social science, but then what in social science? And again, it becomes a thing of where I started in school, right? Like, oh, I like geography, I like history, I like economics, and then it felt like I was starting from, ground zero again. But what helped was, like I started attending conferences, I started networking, which I think we can talk about a little bit more in detail later as well. And that kind of gave me ideas. And then I discovered, so Tata Institute of Social Science is like one of the big institutes for social science in India. So just because it's a big name, I was, thinking I want to get there. And I started preparing for TISNET. But even there, they have different courses like gender studies, they have development studies, and there's on climate. But all of those things are some things I like. So it was a question of it was a big decision to decide, which particular masters I wanted to do, which was also when I found out that my Tata Institute of Social Science had this dual degree program with Monash, which was called International Development Practice. So just to give more context as to what that course was, it had a little bit of all these things that I'm talking about, like gender, public policy, and climate, and international relations, and all of that. So because I didn't do my bachelor's in arts, and I didn't do 11th and 12th also in humanities in school, I thought it would make better sense for me to do like a interdisciplinary course and then figure out what I want to do. So yeah, that's kind of how I've transitioned, and now I work as an impact analyst, which is directly working in the social sector. So I think maybe like I was talking to Manu earlier, and it's like we are both consultants. We both do interestingly very similar things that like work wise. I guess it's just like the audience or like the clients we cater to are quite different. So yeah, over to you, Manu.
Thank you, Sam. So yeah, I think it was very refreshing to hear, and I could resonate to a lot of this, information you just told us. The way I got into finance was I knew for sure that I was passionate about science, like biology, physics, and chemistry, but I just didn't know if I could study that for a long term, get into like an engineering or a doctor degree. And I was always keen numbers and like stats and all that stuff. So I knew, okay, I'm doing, accounting, that sort of background. And the reason why finance at that time, one thing which, I'm thankful for what my parents did was they got me to speak to as many people as I can, their friends and like friends of friends, people in back, like companies, like their colleagues and all that stuff. And one thing which stuck out to me was consulting. And at that time, okay, I've seen consultants, they travel everywhere, they have like these amazing lunches, dinners, and they stay at these great places. And I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds like a cool, fun job, and which is what I want to do. And I did land up in that role as well, but it's not how it seems on the outside, actually. But in consulting, like Sam said, she's in a different, like a social lens, like that side of things. And I do a lot more private and government clients in Australia here. And basically what a consultant does is we solve problems. So it could be like, okay, this company wants to start or launch a new product, but how do we make that happen? That's where we come in and try to analyze and, offer them solutions. So we go do that work for them. And your projects can be like 5 weeks, or it can be even like, a 1-year project. So the project I'm on currently, it's wrapping up, and that was about 8 weeks. So a bit over 2 months, I'd say. So it really depends. But all in all, finance was something which I was really passionate about, which is why I picked it. And I actually don't use finance. I've never used finance yet. And in consulting, you can come from any sort of background. I think Sam could sort of relate to that as well. And in my team, I work with somebody who actually finished studying medicine. They're a practicing doctor and they moved to consulting. And they do a lot of healthcare-based projects. You have people who are PhDs, all that stuff. So like the background doesn't really matter. One of my colleagues has actually done a degree in music. You would think, oh, how does music sort of play a difference, or like how does it contribute in this? But you never know. Like it's the way you think, the analytical thinking, the critical skills, critical thinking, all that stuff really matters. So yeah, I think one thing I'm really happy about is I meet so many people from diverse backgrounds, which I traditionally wouldn't have had the option with. Like a 9 to 5. This is not exactly like a 9 to 5. Sometimes you work long hours, sometimes you finish early, but it's not the traditional thing, which is what I love about it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was really, helpful to know about how both of you navigated your way through school, college, placements. So, yeah, thank you for that. Now, Manu, since you studied and now work in Australia, could you
Yeah.
tell us a bit about what life is like there as an international student? And also, it would be great if you can talk about how you got the exchange program.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me start off with how I applied into the university and got it. So I knew I had a couple of countries in mind, UK, US, Australia, and all of that stuff. And in that, you obviously, you narrow down on which sort of field you want to go into, like accounting, finance, or, whatever it is you're choosing. And in that, the reason why I chose Australia is, although I did apply in different countries, the ranking of the university also matters. So when I say ranking, don't just look at the overall ranking of the university, but also have a look. They also QS World Ranking also releases like your university course specific rankings. Like, they could say these are the top 10 universities for finance or something like that. So when I did pick this university, which I graduated from, they were like the top 10 at that time when I, was choosing universities. So that sort of pushed me to that direction. I didn't have an affinity towards Australia or like UK or US. So that's how I, got into this college. And then after that, after I received my offer, I deferred it, which they were really happy about. One thing about universities in Australia is they're very flexible. So even if I started in finance and if I didn't like it, I did have the support from the university to move into another program. It's very easy to switch. So, so when I started my first year, I met people who were in an engineering background who finished like 1 year of engineering and they actually moved into commerce, and it's seamless. You don't have to stress about so much. You can use some of the credits which you did in that course into, like other learnings and all that stuff. So basically it's not like, you're wasting an entire year, but, doing this. So that was the university bit. And the exchange program, it's the Rotary Club, which sort of organizes the Rotary Youth Exchange Program. And my family was not a part of Rotary, so you don't have to, as far as I know, you don't have to be a Rotarian, as in a part of the Rotary Club, to go on these programs. So reach out to the nearest Rotary clubs near you, and they can definitely guide some light on this. And I know they are actively looking for a lot of people to send them from Coimbatore and Erode and all those places. And when I went to that program, I think in my cohort, we had about 8 people. So there were 2 of us going to Germany, people going to the US, France, different parts of the world, Canada, Argentina. So yeah, so that was the exchange program, finished 1 year. I went to school there, although I finished my 12th in India and then I got into a college. So going to school there and studying was not like, getting the marks was not an important thing for me, but it was more a cultural experience, learning the language, meeting new people there. So I am fluent in German. So I speak German. And you also stay with the host family there. So depending on, the size of the place you're going to, you'll be living with one family for 4 months and change every, like 4 months, 4 months and 4 months, or it could be 6 months and 6 months. But in my case, I ended up staying with this family for the whole year because they were really happy with me. And they just asked me if I want to stay with them. And then I said yes. So I stayed with them, formed a really close bond. Even today, we're always calling and messaging each other. And they always send me Christmas presents, which is quite nice. And I've been to Germany a couple of times after, and I stay with them. So, they're wanting to come to India and Australia and all that stuff. So I think you form lifelong, like the connection and bond. And also, I think in my group, in that exchange program, in Germany, there were about 40 other people. I was the only guy from India, and everybody else were like from, Mexico, Brazil. You don't even imagine of integrating with those kind of people in those cultures, which I'm really thankful for getting that opportunity. And even today, if I want to say, I want to go to Dominican Republic, at first I was like, oh, okay, where is this country? Obviously, it's like, like America side, but yes, I've got a really good friend there, so I can just book a flight, go there, stay with her. So I think those are the kind of bonds you form, and they're all lifelong friendships. And then, in the beginning, I could remember my grandmother saying, "Oh, you're wasting 1 year of your life. What's going to happen?" All that stuff, right? But I think she later came to terms and understood that, okay, this person is not wasting 1 year of their life, but actually that 1 year could teach them what life could mean. So I think anything you do, any experience you're going through, it's all for a reason, and try to cherish them along the way. And yeah, so I came back soon after COVID happened, and then I was doing online classes at my university in Australia. And the moment I was able to fly there to Sydney, I was like, okay, cool. I need to make the best of it because I've already lost almost a year studying online. I haven't made much friends apart from the people I've met in my courses. And then, so what I actually did was I integrated myself really well. I was part of a lot of societies in university, like organizing a bunch of different events, networking events, and all that stuff. So, like Sam said, regarding networking, but we can definitely touch upon that a bit later. But that was one of the great ways I met, potential employers and made good connections. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that one also was like really great, and I got to know things that I never knew about the Rotary Youth Exchange Program and
Yeah.
how you got like another set of family away from family. So that was great. Also, just letting the audience know that if you guys have any questions, you guys can either drop it in the chat or raise your hand. We'll call on you. Kanushka?
Thank you, Kritika and Deepa. And Sambhavi, for students who want to do something that makes an impact, maybe something beyond traditional business roles, what advice would you give them?
Okay, so before that, I'll maybe just give an idea of what is it that I exactly do. So in India, there is across the world actually, the businesses have something called CSR, which is corporate social responsibility, where big businesses are expected to, it's mandated by law that they give away 1% of their profits to, it could be, I wouldn't really say charity, but they to put into like say an NGO or something which actually does something on ground. Like it could be, for example, there are kids who are part of an orphanage who are given free education, or I'm just giving you a basic example, right? So it is also mandated by law that these kind of CSR projects are assessed, in the sense that if someone tells me that I need to give like part of my profits for like things like this, and I'm not really into it, I could always come up with ways to cook it up. Like there could be nothing, but I could just be lying saying I'm giving it to this particular NGO who's helping, this set of people and so on, which is why it's also mandated by law that they give an assessment report. So what I do as an impact analyst is I'm part of such assessments. So we actually see that, okay, so this is the problem that you're trying to address. And this is where like the NGO or whoever comes in, and they are doing something to help these people. So we actually kind of check if it is working. So the most fun part of my job is that I get to travel across India and I get to interact with people. So I'm flying to Indore tomorrow, and I'll be there for like I'll be in Madhya Pradesh, and with my broken Hindi, I think I'll get to talk to like surveys with people who are working in a factory and so on, and then we get insights. And I find it very interesting to meet people, get to know stories. So that's basically what I do. It also is a little kind of translate to a bigger thing where across the world people want to just not invest their money in anything, but they want it to have some kind of a meaning. So social enterprises are also coming up in India and abroad. So even for them, sometimes they just want to know that they're trying to address a problem, is it working or not? So that's where the analyst part comes in, and we kind of give them recommendation on what's working, what's not working, and all that. So that's basically about my job. So as to how to get there, I think when Manu was talking about him working with colleagues who are from different backgrounds, I think that kind of applies here as well. So whatever you're trying to do, like whatever kind of a job or whatever bachelor's, you're picking up on certain skills, and that is what is important. And all these skills become very transferable. So like it might look like my auditing experience has nothing to do with what I do, but in a lot of ways, when I least expect it, my auditor brain actually helps give better insights that others wouldn't be able to give. So considering that, I think I wouldn't really say this is the kind of skill set that you need to get into the social sector. But I think what would help is just to, like I said, there are too many options these days. And like, exchange program that Manu was talking about was very interesting. So something like that could also lead you to a path where you find something in the social space. And there are honestly too many problems in the world that needs solving. But I guess for me, I think I was talking about how I didn't know my particular area of interest when I started my master's. But now that I've completed my master's and I've started working here, I know that my calling is climate change. So I want to eventually transition into being a sustainability consultant, which means that all of these, the only difference is the theoretical knowledge that you would need, at least to show on paper saying, hey, I have an interest here. So I kind of, I'm showing it to my potential employer, that you can hire me because I have this interest. And obviously skills come along with it. So that is basically what I would tell, that, in case if you feel like you have a particular calling, you don't have to at this point, but if you do, I guess then you kind of start picking up. Like I did a lot of courses on Coursera and edX. I think once I did on justice in financial markets, and once I did on feminism. So I guess it's okay to kind of, try, do a trial and error sort of a thing. And I think, again, like what Manu said, right? Like everything kind of happens for a reason, and then you kind of find your path through it. But just to add on, I mean, because we were talking about Australia earlier, and unlike Manu, I don't think I had any affinity. It was just that I wanted an experience abroad. And for my personal circumstances, I kind of wanted a course that I can fund with my own savings. And this course that I did was like full scholarship and so on. I was like, okay, this is perfect. Even if it's a year, I'm going to go for it. But whoever is considering Australia, I think it is definitely worth the experience. I think my perspectives have changed a lot in over the span of 1 year. And I had the most challenging 1 year, but also the maximum growth. So that's about that.
That was very insightful as well. And since you already talked about skills, it brings me to the next question. Both of you, were you guys involved in any school activities or let's say college life experience that helped you develop useful skills over the span of time or the span of years?
Probably take that one first then. So yeah, I think in school I was very much involved. I was part of the MUN. I've organized a couple of MUNs, the Model United Nations competitions and all that stuff. And I know CS also had like a partnership with a couple of other, companies many years ago when I was still a student. And part of that also, we helped organize the one in Erode, and I've been to the Erode campus actually for these kind of events as well. And then we did like a couple of tree planting initiatives in the Coimbatore campus. I've, helping with that. But anything I would do, like, annual day, I would actually recommend, I think I stepped up a lot in of those places compared to my peers. And I was really happy to make those choices. And then teachers would also know, okay, this person is quite reliable and in this way of thing, he's done this before. And they would actually come to you for those opportunities as well. So I think that way you're not just, getting skills or like, those experiences under your bucket, but you're also showing your leadership, like qualities and all that stuff. So I think anything for example, Kritika and Kanishka today doing this event and co-hosting, I think that all is a great value for you guys in your careers as well. You never know, you're like, oh, okay, we're just hosting today, but but these could be like really transferable skills, like in your careers when you're handling meetings or you're going for your first internship and trying to have that conversation. These are things you can talk about, say, facilitating sessions. They're all great skills. And like Sam, and I were talking about, nothing goes to waste. They do help you in some way or the other. But to answer your question, yes, I was very much involved in doing a lot of the activities in school and even university and at work as well. I recently organized Diwali in our Sydney office and Brisbane office and a bunch of other things. And at the moment, we are very much involved in, with the unity of people. So the LGBTQ society, the group and community, we organize a lot of events for them. And I do feel very rewarding and fulfilling because, you are giving back to the community. And yeah, that's something which I quite like as well. And yeah, even when I was in Coimbatore, we did like the marathons and stuff, and I was very much there volunteering. So it's a big part of who I am today as well.
Yeah. Again, resonate a lot with what Manu said. But I think apart from that, I guess even I was part of, I think I was mentioning earlier how I was very competitive. I was part of like a lot of extracurriculars, and that was very helpful. I was also like very into English, and I used to I used to be like, I guess if you ask my batchmates, they would tell that I was that annoying kid who would ask a lot of questions in grammar class, and it often felt like I was the only person who was paying attention in those classes. But it did, maybe at that point it felt like it was just naturally an interest, but didn't come across like as something that would probably help me in the future. But now I work part-time as an English tutor, and I'm so grateful that I was that kid once. So point is that I guess you do have interest and you pick up on certain skills. It's not like, this skill is going to be important and this is not. You would never know when which skill would kind of help you. And talking about being, very into English, I was also into reading a lot. I was best friends with the librarian in CS Erode. I don't know if she's still the librarian there. And, we would kind of tell her what kind of books we wanted. And so I got into reading quite early. And that's still a habit I continue. And in a lot of ways, I think, again, that is what kind of helped me do a transition from not knowing what I wanted to do and where my interests lie. So in maybe when it comes to work skills, obviously, like whatever Manu was talking about before, about having that critical thinking, the analytical skill, and all of that is something you kind of build over with time. But to build over on it, I guess all the little things like being able to organize like an event at school is kind of shaping you for that. And how that plays into like your work life might look different for everyone. But like I said, right, I travel a lot for work, which means I kind of engage with a lot of strangers, and it's like that could be chaos coming from any angle, and I need to know how to solve it. So that's where like my problem solving skill comes. And I think I kind of learned how to do that now because I used to be part of events, and that's very similar but in different scales, of course. But just like before you're going to perform on stage on annual day, someone might be missing, or whatever that is. So yeah, so that's I guess how the things that I did in school and I've learned has helped me now.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. And you guys have spoken a lot about school. So, can you now say about what was the biggest difference you guys noticed between school and university life?
I think for me, it was, your teacher's not there. And I'm like, okay. And, back in CS, we are sitting in a class, the teachers come. But here, you go to the teachers, like different places. And I just thought, okay, wow. And I remember my first course, your teachers are not there to like guide you or anything. And then a lot of it is all self-learning. And, you attend the lecture and then you go to that class and that's it. But, I used to bother my teachers, okay, what is this? What does this mean? Why does this happen? And all that stuff. Like in university, everybody is very chill and like no uniforms. And, I really missed that school experience. And it's very different. But again, now that I'm working, I'm like, oh, I actually miss university. So I guess, you're always missing something. But in terms of how different it is quite different. I can't really speak to as in how it's different from like Indian colleges and all that stuff. But at least from my point of view, it's not a set schedule. Like I had a couple of my cousins who study in India, and they're doing like college Monday to Friday. But for me, it was only like 1 or 2 days, and the remaining 3 days is just a lot more learning and reading by yourself. So you'd often find me in the university libraries, just sitting there with my friends, doing group studies and all that stuff. So it's very different from school life. Like you don't have that person policing you behind and saying, okay, do this, do your assignment, do that, like even your parents, right? So it's all up to you to grow and learn from that.
Okay, for once, I think I had quite the opposite experience. Manu, the professors were very much there in my bachelor's. It did not feel very different from school. I didn't have a uniform, but we had a strict dress code. And yeah, the timings were extremely strict. And so I remember we had to be in class at 9 a.m. And I think the major difference that no one told me about was how much important attendance is in university. And they'd be like, you need 85% attendance minimum to kind of like, be eligible to sit in the exams. And I thought 85%, no big deal, but it quite was. I think if I miss, 2-3 classes, it automatically goes up to 85%. And we also had like marks for if we had, I think, more than 95% attendance, we get like complete 5 marks. And so there was a lot of pressure. So coming back to my class starting at 9 a.m., we all used to enter from like this particular gate, which is where also the student community used to live. It used to be jam-packed like 10 minutes before 9 a.m. because they will shut the gate at 9 a.m. And, you have to go rushing. So in those ways, I think I didn't didn't personally have that much flexibility, but again, that's I guess the difference between how a university here could work. Again, this was my experience from 2016 to 2019. So how much has it changed now? I wouldn't really know. But like how Manu said, when I went to Monash though, I was, first of all, it was very surprising to see that, like you said, there is no teacher. Like I need to approach them, and there's so much flexibility, and it's more of, it's left up to you whether you want to learn or not. And you end up taking ownership. So I guess that is probably how different it could be culturally when it comes to how people approach, or like institutions approach education as such. So that was basically, but doesn't mean that I had a bad experience in college. I think the main difference was that, like I mentioned, in Erode, it was very similar kind of people who come from similar families, and you know, we have a particular mindset being from a particular place. When I moved to Bangalore and I was living by myself alone for like the first time, as in I was sharing a space, but away from family, that taught me a lot. And you know, there was a lot of unlearning that happened from meeting people from different states and who speak different languages. And I started picking up on languages then, you know, like little bit of Kannada, little bit of Hindi, and all of that surprisingly helps me now. If we don't have someone to do surveys in a particular language, I kind of use AI's help also and kind of match up and do it. So that way, I guess college becomes like the first stepping stone after school that teaches you a lot of different life skills.
I have another question now, which would be, how did you you guys talked about skills and networking, if as far as I remember. You wanted to express or stress on that point again. So, how did you land your first job after graduation? And was it through campus placements, networking, or internship?
I could probably answer that, but please note that my response is very Australia specific. So when I was in university, I was doing it. So what they do is in the third, so I was a 4-year degree course, right? And in my third year, so a year before your final year is called the penultimate year. So when you're a penultimate student, that's when everybody do the internships. So what I did is, I think around my end of second year, I was applying for internship positions for my third year. And luckily, I got one, and it was not, I think I probably applied to like 40, 50 places only to get like, 4 or 5 interviews. And then out of that, only one acceptance, right? So it definitely is hard because you have so many students, not, they're all thinking like us. They're like, okay, I need to get my internship. I need to do this. I need to do that. So it is really competitive. And the way you sort of set yourself different from others, I remember in my interviews, like my internship, my current, my full-time job and all of that, people really want to know who you are outside of your resume. So one of them, they didn't even look at my resume and they said, okay, tell me about yourself, tell me about something which is not in your resume, tell me about things which you're passionate about. And then I just suddenly started talking about baking. And then, one conversation led to another. And I think end of the day, in a position like us, in that early career, what people really want is someone who is willing to learn and is super keen, because skills are something which they can obviously teach you with trainings and, whatever modules and all that stuff. But that willingness to learn, that passion, and, I guess just being a kind human being in the first place is really important. Obviously, your marks is one element of it. It will get your, get your foot through the door. But I think, a lot of the people I've seen, who had much higher marks than me, didn't even get to that, past the interview stage, because I think your other skills matter. Because I wasn't only focused on studies, but I also did a bunch of, like societies and like other competitions and, a bunch of random like co-curricular stuff, right? And volunteering. So people are very much, focused on that overall balance of things rather than just like one element, like that tunnel vision. So I think to say, my experiences from school to like, leadership and, like if you're a house captain, school captain, all of that things, like, it makes a difference. And even if you don't make up into those positions, it doesn't matter. Like people are still, giving you opportunities. Like you can go to your teachers, saying, hey, I want to get more involved in like, or reach out to your school counselors, they're amazing for that reason. Like I think my counselor gave me a lot of good ideas. She spoke about Prabhava was in the call actually, and we spoke about Duke of Edinburgh and all that stuff. So those little things actually make a lot of difference, right? And in my, like even my internship, I got that, and then they offered me a full-time job. But that was something which, I want to do something different, like consulting, like I mentioned. And even today, like the people who I work with, I'm in touch with them. So when I go visit them, we always catch up and we get to know, and they're genuinely interested in, like they're more like mentors. They said, you can reach out to me anytime. So you build that really good connections with them. And later down the road, if I want to go and work in that company, it's easy for me to reach out to them and say, okay, hey, I have this. And even my current job, like the interviews were more, I wouldn't say vibe check, but they definitely want like who you are as a person really matters. And I think, skills are something which you can always learn, like I said, but having the positive attitude and the keenness is very important as someone who's just starting out.
Okay, so I my experience with networking is also very similar, but again, like I said, I got my first job through campus placement, and so when I guess one thing that a lot of people fail to understand is the current job market is highly competitive, and with AI and all of that is in place, people really value human to human connection. So when you're in universities, especially the ones that offer campus placement, it becomes the path becomes easier because everyone is going to be looked at the same way, right? Like the resumes and everyone is put through the same level of sort of tests, if I can say it like that. But what happens, like, again, this is from my experience of having moved out from my first job and, doing masters on my own and so on, is after that, the world is very different or feels very different, especially when it comes to job hunting, which is why networking becomes very important. And by that, I think it's like, you should always be open to kind of whatever person you meet, because you will never know what kind of help they might offer you later on. Like if I have to give an example, I know I briefly spoke to Manu before we had this whole event, but now I think in case if I ever find some lead in Sydney or something, I think my first thing would be probably to want to reach out to him, right? So that is kind of how networking basically works. And it sometimes feel extremely, nerve-wracking. So my first the only time I initially did an internship was when I was doing my master's. So my first year of master's was in Mumbai and second year was in Melbourne. And in the first year, we had to do an internship. So I had a friend who was working for this organization called Social Lens. And I just cold emailed the CEO and I thought, what is there for me to lose? And it was an unpaid internship, but it was still an opportunity. So I took it. And for me, I think I was conscious about the fact that I didn't have, the social sector experience. So every opportunity seemed very important to me. And when I went and did my internship was when I understood that I actually really like what they do. There's like, I want to learn more about this. But because I was doing that internship, I kind of also created an impression on the CEO that I could be their potential employee. And so the CEO herself said, once if I choose to return to India after my master's, that I could always email her. During my time in Australia, I think part-time jobs are a thing there. And it was very important for me to get a part-time job. And the traditional route of, applying online only worked for a very few. Again, the kind of part-time jobs came through networking. So I think I spoke to someone who had a tuition center, and then they said, hey, would you be willing to be my English tutor? Your English sounds decent enough. And that's how I started. And I started teaching for like second standard, third standard kids, but they saw the kind of work I was doing. And now I teach year 12 students who are in Australia. So that is also something, again, I think my perspective comes from the place of me being someone who has varied interests. I kind of like doing a lot of things on the side and, doing that. So that kind of helps me. And now I know that if I ever want something in Australia, I can always reach out to them. So they also have introduced me to other people. And I think it's important to be open to be able to kind of jump onto those opportunities. And I was told that, just message this person on LinkedIn saying you want to catch up for coffee. And I was like, what do you mean? Like that? I don't want to do that, but I had to do that. And I guess that kind of process is important to go through, even irrespective of how it feels, because that's kind of how the world works. And you will never know which person has a lead. Another example I can think of is I started this was again during my time of me trying to figure out where my interests lie. So I started volunteering with this organization called Slow Fashion Movement. And it's been 3 years, and now I've become the country lead of Slow Fashion India, which feels like a big moment. And so if I meet someone from like the sustainability field and I start talking to them about slow fashion, and that has also led me to a lot of interesting conversations, and people have offered jobs to me saying, hey, would you be interested in working for me? And that is kind of how it works, which is why I guess both Manu and I feel that networking plays an important role. And one should be, even starting from your college, I guess it kind of starts there. And even now, for example, that, that now that we've been part of this conversation, and if you want to reach out to either of us, I guess all it takes is like maybe on LinkedIn, just finding us and just dropping a text saying, hey, I was part of this conversation. And then I'm going to remember you. So later on, if you would have a question, I guess both of us would be more than happy to help you out. And that is kind of how this works.
Absolutely. Sorry, Sam, just to add on, I think one of the big things is for us, I think when we were going through this whole process, we didn't have alumni talks or anything, right? So you guys are like one step ahead of us. You've had this opportunity, you've met us today, and obviously, we're more than happy to spend and I guess, talk about our experience, which could make a little difference for you guys. And networking is something important, like we both emphasize, but I can also know the challenges behind it, right? Like that first coffee, like how Sam mentioned, even for me, even after getting the job, having coffee with the manager, I was just thinking, okay, what would I actually talk to them about? And, it's such a nerve-wracking experience, you feel so like it's very daunting. And I think, the beauty of it is getting out of your comfort zone. It will be uncomfortable, but, if you're comfortable, then you're not going to go out of it. So get out of your comfort zone and be genuine. I think that's what really helped me. Just be yourself. Because, often with your interviewers, employers, teachers, whoever it is, like professors, they've seen so many people, right? And they can see through if you're putting like a facade or if you're trying to be fake or, like whatever. But just be yourself. I think that's one of the biggest learnings I've got so far, and which I'd like to share with you.
Very interesting. So it must have been quite an experience for both of you. Okay, so now we'll open up the floor for some questions.
Shambhavi and Manu, congratulations to both of you on pursuing your endeavors. Thank you for giving that talk. My daughter is in 10th now, and I am in the process of applying for a few jobs there in Australia. I have not yet decided which area I will be based. I don't know where I will get the job, but I don't want to leave my kid here 11th and 12th. I would like to take her with me, but it would be a totally different experience for her. So many of them have discouraged me, and they have told me, let her continue, finish her 12th and go. But I'd like to take her there. I would like to know this. I don't know. I'm asking, like, before this, like 11th and 12th, how it would be. Will she be able to cope in the public schools, or whatever the syllabus and the people around there? Yeah.
I can take that, and I think this is where my tutoring experience might help. So I guess it is one thing that I've noticed is the curriculum is very different from India to Australia. So there might be a little bit of kind of adapting. I wouldn't say it would be really challenging, but just understanding how it works. And obviously it is going to differ. Let's say if you go to Victoria, it's going to VC is different from how NSW approaches its 11th and 12th. So there will be little adaptation that she might have to do. And I think that the period of 11th will really help. And even in Australia, they kind of, they have this unit 1, 2 thing, and then it gradually moves to unit 3 and 4. So it's not like they just jump right into it, whichever. And it's not like, how it works like commerce or medicine like that. She gets to pick on particular subjects, and just understanding how the ATAR works would probably just I guess you will also need to put in a little bit of effort into understanding how ATAR works. And I guess they have this system where each subject has a particular weightage. I guess like if she takes psychology, for example, I think it doesn't have a lot of weightage, and that kind of is tied to how their whole skilled job list sort of works. And so I guess the only thing would be to just understanding all of that. Otherwise, I don't think it is going to be of a huge challenge for you or for her, other than adapting to a new place. And just and the students there are extremely friendly and accommodating. So there are also a lot of Indians there, obviously. So I don't think it's going to be really bad.
I think it's a great example of somebody. But I can actually give a little bit of an example from my own house, actually. So when I moved to Sydney, my brother also came, and he just finished 10th in CS Coimbatore. So after finishing 10th, he did 11th and 12th. But basically what happened is when we were going to the schools there, they said, because we finished like middle of the year, I think around April, that's when we got our exams, about 10th results or whatever. And they said, so the school year starts in January to like December, right? So he'd already lost about half a year of his if he's joining 11th. So what the school recommended was actually for him to do like the last 6 months of 10 again. So he repeated, and the reason was that because in India, I think we're a bit higher, like, we finished 10th at a younger age. And, in Australia, you've got to be finished, if you're meant to finish I think you're meant to be 17, or you end up close to finishing 16 years of age. So because he was only 15 at the time, they suggested for him to do that last 6 months again. And that actually was a bit helpful, which we think wise also, because he made he integrated really well. He made those friends. And I think for 11th and 12th, like how Sam mentioned, unit 1, unit 2, you're meant to pick those courses in your 10th standard, like end of 10th. So that really made a big difference. So he, I think he found that transition pretty well. And again, he came from an IGCSE background, but I applied with my CBSE marks after 12th. So we both had different experiences. And from what I can see, English is very different from CBSE English to studying there. And my brother did IGCSE, and for him it was a bit easier. But when I look in his his work and all that stuff, it definitely was a big difference. And at least with my I don't know how updated the books are, the material is right now. But in CBSE we didn't have a lot of opportunities for critical thinking, analytical writing, and all the essay writing and all that stuff. It was a lot more reading, comprehension, grammar, all that stuff. So I think they should be fine. But if you're looking to pursue university in Australia or abroad, it's quite good and handy to do that 11th and 12th in the school there, because you'll be able to transition more easily.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One more thing, is there any entrance exam to join this 11th and 12th or whatever?
So my brother didn't have any, but again, it depends on the school you go to and all that stuff.
I think I'm not sure about private schools, but for public schools, how it works is if you're living in a particular suburb and they have if you're within a particular radius, you can join that school. It's only if you want to join a school in another suburb, that's not allowed. And but you might also have to check. Not all of these schools are of the same good standard. So you might just have to kind of check which ones are better. I guess there are, again, selective schools, but then that's not something your daughter can apply for, because that kind of starts in 7th, 8th standard, if I'm not wrong. And that has entrance exams. But for 11th and 12th, I don't think there are any entrance exams, at least for public schools.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you.
Okay, so now before we encourage or get another audience question, there is a question that we'd like to ask you. And after that, we'll again go back to the audience questions. When you guys were applying, how did you guys build your profile to a level that you guys were accepted for, let's say, the Monash University and the UNSW Sydney, or Christ, or any university that you guys went to? And if you could tell us any specific ones that really helped build the profile a little elaborately, that would really help.
And go first. For Christ, I think back then there was an entrance test and an interview. So it was more about having to convince them happened during the interview. And it was, I guess, at least then, what I sensed was that they just wanted to kind of see how confident I was, how was my, how well am I articulating, and things like that. So I didn't really have to, build a profile or anything. But I want you to kind of remember that my experience is from 9 years ago. So I wouldn't know if it has changed a lot now. And even for when I was sitting for Deloitte's interview, it was more about, just they wanting to know how kind of ready I am, and how, in the sense of do I come across as an individual who would do anything and learn quickly, and things like that. For Monash, again, because I went through an Indian university, it was a little different. So I had an entrance exam again, and I had an interview again. I guess, again, it's just the same kind of things they were probably trying to gauge. I also had to submit an SOP specifically for Monash. But by then, I already had a Big Four name on my resume backing me, and, just things like that. So it kind of helped. And, I just had to, in a way, convince them as to why I'm making this switch, and more I wouldn't call it justification, but I guess there's always this thing of, me coming across as someone who's just very confused, which I think is fine, but I don't think everyone perceives it the same way. So I just had to convince, saying, hey, this is what I want to do because of this and this reason, and which is where me having done, courses on Coursera, edX, and all of that helped. And that's how I could say that this is proof that my interest lies there. And again, for my job, it was a very similar thing. In my case, very specifically because I'm making a big transition and them wanting to understand why I'm doing that. But I guess otherwise you naturally end up building your profile with time anyways.
All right, thank you so much for that. Manu, do you have anything to add to that? Any specific
Yeah.
courses?
I think for me, the way the Australian universities, again, like how Sam said, this is a while ago. I think I applied about 6 years ago, and every state, so NSW, which is New South Wales, Victoria, all these states have different portals. So what you do is, you go to that portal, you pay the application fee per university or whatever, and you sort of say, okay, this university, like for example, Monash, and I want this course, and I think you can give like another option as well, and then that's it. So you submit your application, and then you have to submit your English language test scores, your SAT exam marks and all that stuff. So all of that, and then once that's all done, you get your results back at a certain date or whatever, and then you can go to that portal and see, okay, this university has accepted me, and then okay, you filter based on that. So that's how pretty much it was when I applied to Australia. And the other thing which I would sort of recommend is lean onto your school career counselors, because I'm sure they'll have more up-to-date information on who and how to reach out to. I think when I applied, I did lean onto other resources as well. I was doing my English, like I used to go for classes for SAT exam, writing my SAT exam, English language tests, all that stuff. And now with AI, you can leverage a lot of tools, online, a lot of websites, a lot of companies. Start pretty early if you can, because, we only get busier as we go. If you're in 10th or 12th, you have your board exam and all that stuff. Like 11th is a really good time. So I did spend a good chunk of my 11th standard doing all of these classes and courses, and the school was very supportive as well.
Yes, thank you both for your clear insight on this thing, all the details. I just want to know, my daughter is on the 10th grade, and is there any online courses which, like on the Coursera or edX, which you recommend for them to just give an insight to the commerce and finance courses, what they are going into,
The things I did was I did a lot of introductory courses, like, you can say introduction to finance, like finance 101, 101, to get an idea of what it actually will be. And the other things, which I also did and recommend is like, Excel, like learning the basics of Excel, PowerPoint, all that stuff, because in my job today, I use a lot of PowerPoint and Excel, and things like that, that will differentiate, someone who's put in that effort to learn now. And especially, after you finish 12th and before college starts, you have the time, right? Like, make use of the time wisely. Obviously, have fun. You've just crossed a massive milestone, but take the time to do all of these courses. Even in university, keep learning. Like what I'm doing now is also keeping in touch with AI. AI is the new thing. Anybody you speak, they're like, oh, what do you think about AI? Like a lot of the people, they talk about AI transformation. People think AI is going to replace jobs, all that stuff. But I think if you know how to use it well, like keep yourself up to date with all those information, keep current, keep know what's happening around you and all that stuff. That's what sets you apart. And you thinking of doing these courses the first step, I think that's a great thing, and we should really encourage them to do that.
Okay.
So we have one last question for you guys. Can you list out all the things that you guys are part of during school and college, including competitions, events that they organized, internships, volunteering, any other things that shaped your profiles?
Yeah, I can take that first. I was more of a jack of all trades, master of none. so I was in school, I think I was part of music, dance, advertisements, I think was a competition, quizzing, damsharads, and all competitions, you name it, except sports. I wasn't very great at it, just except for table tennis. So all of the competitions in school. I think in college, I was part of an oratory club, and we used to again organize events very specific to TED Talk sort of events, and and I was also part of an entrepreneurship club, which again organized events for more focusing on entrepreneurship. And this was in my undergrad. When I was in Deloitte, I used to be like the Spock for, there's something called, again, the CSR thing that I was talking about, where the Deloitte employees are expected to like contribute money to certain causes, and they're expected to like do one day full of volunteering. So I was like a Spock for that. And then when I was doing my master's at this Tata Institute of Social Science, I was part of the animal care club where we would feed the strays in the campus and then look after them. And in Monash, I was part of, there was this student-run cafe, which was fully vegan, and they were giving food in very, minimal costs. So I was part of a volunteer there. So I would, help with like cooking and, dishwashing and all of that. And I also volunteered in a thrift store. That is because of my slow fashion interest, which is also something I volunteered in. So that sums up my, yeah.
No, awesome. I feel like we should have gotten this question before so we can write a list. But I think, yeah, starting off in school, I was very much interested in the entrepreneurship classes and all that stuff. So I was always there. And then, in terms of sports, I was really passionate about basketball. Didn't really go to competitions or anything, but I used to play. And then very much involved in NUNs. I've been to Hyderabad, and like the school took us to this, organization which is organizing MUNs, so Model United Nations. So we went there, and then we had a few I think it was like a 4 or 5 day training, and then we came back to CS Coimbatore and we organized it. And then we've been to CS Erode, and then I think CS started doing their own MUN. So I think it's called a CS MUN or CSA MUN. And then I used to do that. And then also in Coimbatore, the Coimbatore marathons, I was part of the organizing that, volunteering as well. Until I was there, I think I volunteered for about 5 or 6 years in a row. And so I was very much involved in it. And then we did know a couple of doctors in the Coimbatore Cancer Foundation. And then they would go to villages and they'd do screening camps. So what I used to do is, when I think in my 9th, 10th standard, 11th, my brother's also done this. So we just go there, and because, they're seeing all these people in the villages, the doctors are, they don't have a lot of time. So what they'd be doing is they'd be dictating and I'd be writing it for them. So I used to go on these camps, like go on this little Omni van, sit there and go travel for like 2-3 hours one way, and then, do all that. So that's all very nice. So I did a lot of volunteering. And then moving on to university, I was part of a lot of so I was part of the finance society, business society, economics. And then through that, at least here in Australia, you have a lot of, you can become like the president of the society, director, all that stuff. So I did have like a few director positions and all that stuff. And I was also very much involved, with the Indian Society in Sydney. So I was part of that. And a lot of volunteering as well in Sydney for first years. The good thing about my university was even if I put an hour of volunteering through that university volunteering program, it came in my final transcript. So when I graduated, it came in my thing saying, okay, this person's volunteered for this cause and this is their duration. So it's quite good because, when you speak to employees about saying, I've done this, I've done that, you have something credible to show. So all of that really helps. But now recently at work, I'm big on mental health. So I've been doing a lot of, so in June, July, we had the Men's Health Week. And then now I'm organizing the November event starting from 1st of November today. And then very much involved, yesterday, and then very much involved in doing plasma and blood donations. So yeah, that's my latest thing, I guess.
That was great knowing about all your interests. And this was a great session. We've come to the end, unfortunately. Thank you so much, Manu and Sambhavi, for sharing your journeys and being so honest about your experiences. It was really lovely.
Yeah, I think
Thank
the
you.
same. I think everyone here learned something new today. So including me, whether it's about studying abroad, career planning, or just figuring out your interest or learning about that exchange program. So big thanks again to both of you, and thanks to everyone who joined us this morning.
Have a great day, guys. You guys can start leaving.
Thank you to the amazing co-host and CS.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having
And Sam,
us.
of course. Yeah.
Thank you so much.